talking about killing, or not saying the other person is human, or just you know and this just not caring, and connecting that with just that real core sadness, and it's underlying everything in humanity. And it's the knowing in your bones that you're divine, knowing in your bones, in the very cellular structure, that you're part of something that's massively great. It's the universe of all of creation. Knowing it in your bones, in your cells, that you are designed to evolve and co-create. And then the society or the culture, whatever culture and whatever level of the culture we're in, the cultures define the people. And now you have to reconcile that you were made to create with the universe and with each other. And a culture that limits that severely, and the sadness, that underlying core sadness of knowing falsity of what's around you. And this whole big conversation about authenticity. It's the search for what you know in your cells and in your bones. And if you find the courage to touch that sadness and to recognize that sadness in you and recognize that sadness in others, then you can get to the other side. And the other side is the infinite unconditional love of your makeup and who you are and who you're created by and for and with. If you're searching for authenticity, then it's a deep recognition of the lie. And for those who are empaths and they feel the emotions of others, and it's like that minestrone soup of emotions, all of the good things, the bad things, the happy things, the sad things, the words of love not spoken, the words of love spoken and refused, the words of love spoken and received and given freely, the words of hate, the words of fear, the ideas of fear. I mean, all of that minestrone soup. And earlier we were talking about how that underlying sadness was the fire that was bubbling underneath all of this, And so if you can take that soup off the fire for a moment and really look at the fire of that sadness, and especially if you're an empath where you can feel this core sadness of other people, your core sadness of the others, and really use the principles of divine light or infinite intelligence that created all things, omniscient wisdom that knows how to manage all things for the highest good of all, and infinite, omnipotent, all-powerful, unconditional love that can transform anything into anything. It's all an alchemical process anyway. And let that rise up through that fire of sadness. Then there's that bigger explosion of love that can move through it and transform everything. But the big thing is to recognize the sadness, so that when we're looking at these extreme acts of violence and we're looking at these extreme acts of acting out, if you can understand the underlying sadness behind it, then that can open up ways to see new solutions to the dynamic. I remember reading an article years ago, and it was just a story of a man that had come, and he had the woman at gunpoint, and he was going to rape her. And as he was physically coming towards her in an aggressive manner, she looked him in the eyes and said, "Nobody loves me either." And it stopped him in his tracks. And they ended up sitting down and having a conversation and sharing each other's stories. And this was an article where they were both telling what was going on their two sides. And they both felt like it was the first time that they had seen each other or somebody had seen them, and how powerful that was. And they spoke of the underlying sadness. They weren't speaking of it in the terms that I'm speaking of it now, but they spoke of that underlying sadness. And that story stuck with me. And I think I read it 35 years ago. But it has stayed with me because it's the power of seeing another human being and feeling like you're being seen. So I have to question, big question mark. I have to question, how much would things shift if we were really able to sit with that sadness in ourselves without trying to fix it, without trying to blame it on anybody, and just acknowledge that this is an underlying current in humanity, just for the way that we've been taught to live this human experience. And so if we can just sit with that sadness and make friends with it and learn from it and love me anyway, love yourself anyway, and understand that other people are living above the fire, in the minestrone soup and the fire of sadness underneath. And if you understand that, then you can get out of the pot for a moment, and get to the light underneath it. Just food for thought. No pun intended on the minestrone soup, but it's food for thought. And these are some of the things that are going on in my mind, thinking, how can I use my light? How can I use that understanding, to assist others? And wouldn't it be lovely if we all thought about that? And I know in the light circle, I'm going to broach this to the light circle to see if they're interested in transmitting new awarenesses, to the collective consciousness on that. But I would love to hear other people's ideas too on different ways that we can use our light to transform that underlying sadness. That would be lovely, because I tell you, individually we might be strong, but together we become a force. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for being interested in learning on how to live your light more fully and freely with emotional freedoms that you haven't even yet begun to dream of, and that gives you the courage and clarity to live your divine soul purpose. Now, just so that I play well with the algorithms here on YouTube, be sure to like the video. Please leave me a comment, because I do love more two-way conversations, and subscribe if you want to stay in touch with any of the new material that I'm putting out there.